Last time we walked through the 5-day reset, the kind the Hachi monks have been running quietly since 1244, and the kind Volta Longo's lab at USC finally measured in the Brandhorst paper in 2015. IGF-1 dropped. Autophagy switched on. The body cleaned itself up. 800 years of Shojin Ryori in a Soto Zen monastery and a 2017 mouse trial in Science Translational Medicine were saying the same word in 2 different accents. The body knows how to take itself apart for a few days and start fresh. Today I want to talk about what happens after that cleanup. What your cells actually rebuild themselves with. The answer, in one word, is mitochondria, the small energy factories inside almost every cell you have. After 60, the working count has been quietly declining for about 30 years. That part sounds heavy. The next part is the one that actually matters. The decline is not one way. The same engines my Amma kept running in her body until she was 96 are the engines we are about to rebuild together. 20 ways, 10 from the Western literature and 10 from the Asian household, mostly costing under $2 a day. A quick standard caveat before we go further. This is research-based educational content. If you are managing a condition, that conversation goes through your doctor. Some of what I will mention tonight, NMN, CoQ10, urolithin A, has interaction profiles. Use this video as conversation material, not as a self-prescription. So here is the bridge. The Western framing for what I am about to walk through has a name. It is called mitochondrial biogenesis. The master switch in the cell is a protein called PGC1-alpha. Translation in plain terms, this is the foreman who decides whether the cell builds new energy factories today or coasts on the ones it already has. When PGC1-alpha is activated, the cell makes new mitochondria. When it stays quiet for years, the existing mitochondria age, accumulate damage, and the tissue that depends on them, your heart, your muscle, your brain, your liver, slowly loses the capacity to do what it used to. The Eastern framing for the same condition is older and gentler. The traditional Asian household did not have the word mitochondria. It had 3 observations. The first was that you should stop eating before you are full. The second was that you should walk after every meal, even if only to the gate. The third was that warmth, bitterness, and ferment, in some combination, should appear at every meaningful table. These 3 observations, lived for 60 or 70 or 80 years across an entire population, are what produced the centenarian density of Okinawa, 870 per 100,000, against a US average of 20. The lab and the kitchen converge here. The Yoshino group at Washington University, in their 2021 trial published in Science, gave NMN to 25 postmenopausal women with prediabetes. Insulin sensitivity in muscle improved by 25% over 10 weeks. The mechanism? NMN raises NAD+, which feeds the sirtuin enzymes, which activate PGC1-alpha. New mitochondria. The same activation my grandmother induced through hara hachi bu, eating to about 80% of fullness every meal for 96 years until the day she died with the blood pressure of a woman half her age. 20 interventions, 10 Western, 10 Asian and ancestral. Most of them do the same thing through different doors. I will alternate between them so the bridge stays visible. Item 1. The Okinawan caloric pattern. Hara hachi bu. Eating until you are 80% full. Not a diet, a signal. When you finish a meal mildly hungry rather than satisfied, you create a brief window of cellular energy demand. That demand activates AMPK, which talks to PGC1 alpha, which builds new mitochondria. The Okinawa centenarian study, which has run for over 45 years now, documented an average daily intake of about 1,800 calories across most of the 20th century. The U.S. average is 2,600. The intervention costs nothing. It requires only that you put down the chopsticks one bite earlier than you would have. Item 2. Exercise in Zone 2. This is the Western flagship intervention for mitochondrial biogenesis. Zone 2 means the heart rate range where you can still hold a conversation but would prefer not to. About 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. The work of Inigo San Millan, published across multiple papers between 2019 and 2023, shows that elite endurance athletes have mitochondrial density 2 to 3 times that of sedentary peers, and that adults over 60 who train at Zone 2 for 45 minutes 3 times a week regain measurable density within 12 weeks. The mechanism is the same PGC1 alpha cascade. Walking briskly counts. Slow swimming counts. The treadmill at a pace where you could recite a recipe but not sing it counts. Item 3. The postprandial walk. A Japanese practice older than written record. After dinner, you walk, not for exercise, for the meal. The walk lowers the post-meal glucose spike, which lowers the insulin demand, which lowers the inflammatory load, which protects mitochondria from the oxidative stress of high blood sugar. A 2022 meta-analysis in Sports Medicine, 7 trials, 612 subjects, showed a 15-minute postprandial walk reduces post-meal glucose area under the curve by an average of 17%. My grandmother walked to the corner shop after dinner every night for the 80 years she lived in Datong. She did not know about glucose curves. She knew that you do not sit down after eating. Item 4. Cold exposure. The Western literature on this is real and somewhat overhyped. Cold exposure activates UCP1 in brown adipose tissue, raises norepinephrine, and stimulates mitochondrial biogenesis in fat and muscle. A Van Marken-Lichtenbelt study from 2014, replicated since, showed brown fat activation in adults exposed to 19 degrees Celsius rooms for 2 hours daily over 6 weeks. You do not need an ice bath. A cool morning shower for 2 or 3 minutes is enough to start the cascade. For a viewer over 60 with cardiovascular sensitivity, The gentle version is what I recommend. And that conversation goes through your physician first. Item 5. The bowl of natto, eaten at room temperature with breakfast. Fermented soybeans, texture that takes some getting used to, mechanism that is well documented now. Natto contains the highest natural concentration of vitamin K2, specifically MK7, of any food on Earth. K2 directs calcium into bones rather than arteries, but it also supports mitochondrial membrane integrity, which is where the energy production actually happens. The Okinawan diet contained roughly 12 fermented foods. The American diet contains about 2. My grandmother ate fermented black beans every Wednesday. Slightly different culture, same biological principle. $2 at any Asian grocery store. Item 6. NAD plus precursors. NMN and NR. These are the 2 molecules that have generated the most research attention in longevity circles in the last 7 years. NAD+ is the cellular currency that PGC1 alpha needs to build new mitochondria. It declines about 50% between age 40 and 70. Replenishing it through NMN or NR has shown measurable improvements in muscle insulin sensitivity, walking endurance, and skin biomarkers in human trials. I want to be honest, the price tag for these supplements is not trivial, and the long-term safety data is still being gathered. The cellular machinery they support can be activated for free through fasting, exercise, and the next item on this list. Supplement only after you have addressed the foundations, and only with your doctor in the loop. Item 7. The early dinner. Every traditional Asian household ate dinner at 5 or 5:30 in the afternoon. There was no virtue assigned to it. It was simply what you did. The biological consequence: your last meal lands while the sun is still up, which gives the digestive system 3 to 4 hours of activity before sleep, which preserves the deep sleep where mitochondrial repair, autophagy, and growth hormone release actually happen. A 2023 Cell Metabolism paper, N equals 137, showed that shifting dinner from 8 p.m. to 5 p.m. increased nocturnal autophagy markers by 28% over 12 weeks. My grandmother served the last meal of the day at 4:45. The pots were washed by 6. The kitchen was dark by 7. Item 8. Coenzyme Q10. The most studied mitochondrial supplement in the cardiology literature. CoQ10 sits inside the mitochondrial membrane and is essential to the electron transport chain, the part of cellular respiration where ATP is actually produced. Levels decline with age. They decline further with statin use. A 2022 meta-analysis pooled 14 trials of CoQ10 supplementation in older adults. The strongest signal was a reduction in cardiovascular mortality of 14% over follow-up periods of 2 to 4 years. If you are on a statin, this is a reasonable conversation to have with your physician. If you are not, you can get baseline CoQ10 from organ meats, sardines, and the dark portion of beef, which, not coincidentally, are foods my grandmother used in soup every other Sunday. Item 9. The morning sun. 10 to 15 minutes within the first hour of waking, on bare skin if you can, on bare eyes if your prescription allows. This is not a Western intervention or an Eastern intervention. It is a circadian intervention that both traditions arrived at independently. Morning light through the eye sets the master clock in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which entrains every cell in the body. Mitochondria have their own clock. They make more ATP at certain times of day than at others. And an entrained system makes more total energy with less metabolic stress. My grandmother sat on the porch with her tea every morning at 6 a.m. She would have been horrified if I had explained suprachiasmatic entrainment to her. She would not have been surprised by the recommendation. Item 10. Dark sesame, black sesame, hachi ma. Roasted, ground, eaten by the spoonful with rice porridge. Sesamol and sesamin, the two main lignans in dark sesame, have been shown in cellular studies to upregulate sirtuin-1 and increase mitochondrial biomass in muscle cells. A 2023 Korean trial, N equals 96 older adults, showed 12 weeks of 2 tablespoons daily of black sesame paste improved grip strength and reduced fatigue scores compared to placebo. My ama kept a glass jar of toasted black sesame on the kitchen counter. She put it on rice. She put it on greens. She put it on tofu. She lived to 96. $2 at any Asian grocery store. For those of you watching because of someone you love, a parent, a spouse, this next part is especially for you. Caring for someone over 70 whose energy has dropped is exhausting in a way that most people cannot see. The slowing you are watching is not laziness. It is very often mitochondrial. And the practical version of the help you can give in the next 30 days is on this list. If your mother grew up with rice and bittermelon and now lives on Ensure, the gap between those two diets is its own intervention point. If your father stopped walking after dinner because the path got steep, the indoor version of the same walk, 10 minutes of slow movement after the evening meal, does the same biological work. You do not need to fix everything. One ingredient back on the plate. One short walk back in the routine. The exhaustion of caregiving is real. The next 90 seconds of this video have been about giving you something practical, not emotional, because that is what helps right now. Item 11. Fasting windows. The gentle version. Not 72 hours. Not extreme. 12 to 14 hours overnight. The dinner at 5 window I described earlier produces a 13-hour overnight fast naturally. During that fast, the cell switches from building mode to recycling mode. A process called mitophagy clears damaged mitochondria. New ones are then built in their place. This is the mechanism Yoshinori Osumi won the 2016 Nobel Prize for describing. The traditional Asian household did this without naming it. They simply did not eat between dinner and breakfast. The Western literature now has a name for the practice and a measurable outcome. Item 12. Urolithin A. This is one of the more interesting recent additions. Urolithin A is a metabolite produced when gut bacteria break down elagitannins from pomegranate, walnuts, and certain berries. It directly stimulates mitophagy, the cellular cleanup of damaged mitochondria. A 2022 Nature Medicine trial, N equals 88, showed urolithin A supplementation improved muscle endurance in adults over 65. About 40% of adults can produce urolithin A from pomegranate alone. The rest depend on a different gut microbiome composition or supplementation. Pomegranate is not Asian, but it is ancestral across many traditional diets, including Persian and parts of Western China. Item 13. Green tea. EGCG, epigallocatechin gallate, the polyphenol that gives green tea its bitterness and most of its health profile. EGCG has been shown to activate AMPK, the same pathway that fasting and exercise activate, and to support mitochondrial biogenesis in cellular and animal studies. A 2023 Japanese cohort study, 68,000 subjects, 12-year follow-up, found 3 to 5 cups of green tea daily associated with a 15% reduction in all-cause mortality. The Bama County longevity studies in Guangxi Province, China, documented daily green tea consumption across virtually the entire centenarian population studied. 3 cups. Steeped properly. Not sweetened. Not bottled. Item 14. Methylene blue. I will mention this briefly because it is currently in the popular wellness conversation, and I want to be clear about where the evidence is. Methylene blue, at very low doses, has shown mitochondrial supportive effects in cellular and rodent studies. It can act as an alternative electron acceptor in damaged respiratory chains. The human data is limited. The popular dosing is ahead of the safety literature. If you are seeing it in your feed, the responsible position is to wait. There are 12 other items on this list with stronger evidence and 0 medication interactions. Use those first. Item 15. Bone broth, the long-simmered traditional kind. 24 to 48 hours of low simmer with bones, vegetables, ginger, and a splash of vinegar to extract minerals. Glycine, proline, hyaluronic acid, and the trace minerals released across that long simmer support mitochondrial membrane fluidity and the connective tissue scaffolding that mitochondrial-rich tissues sit inside. The clay pot soup my grandmother made on Sunday afternoons was this. The women in our neighborhood drank it when their hands started to swell. There is no 2024 randomized trial for grandmother soup specifically. There are dozens of trials for collagen peptides, glycine, and bone broth-derived amino acids, all converging on the same direction. Item 16. Tai Chi. 20 minutes daily. Gentle, repetitive, ground-anchored movement. A 2022 meta-analysis in JAMA Network Open pooled 23 trials of Tai Chi in adults over 60. Improvements in mitochondrial markers, balance, sleep, and inflammatory biomarkers were consistent across the studies. The mechanism is part exercise, part stress regulation, part rhythmic breathing. The Bama centenarians do something that looks a lot like Tai Chi every morning. The Western literature is now generating the controlled trials that confirm what the Bama elders demonstrated through 80-year careers in their own bodies. Item 17. Dried mushroom polysaccharides. Shiitake, reishi, maitake. Soaked overnight, simmered into broth, eaten with the broth. Beta-glucan polysaccharides in these mushrooms have shown immune modulatory and mitochondrial supportive effects in cellular and translational studies. A 2021 trial in older Japanese adults showed daily reishi-derived polysaccharide supplementation increased natural killer cell activity and reduced fatigue scores over 16 weeks. My grandmother kept a small bag of dried shiitake on the shelf above the stove. Every soup pot started with a handful, soaked first, simmered second. Item 18. Adequate protein at every meal, scaled to age. After 60, the body's anabolic threshold rises. The amount of protein required to trigger muscle protein synthesis and mitochondrial supportive amino acid uptake is higher than it was at 30. The traditional Asian protein density was higher than most Americans recognize. Broths, tofu, fish, fermented soy, eggs across the day. Aim for 30 grams of protein per meal, 3 meals a day, animal or plant or mixed. Sarcopenia takes 30% of muscle mass between 50 and 80 in sedentary adults. Adequate protein and resistance work move that number considerably. Item 19. Pulses of warmth. Sauna where available, or simply hot baths, or the traditional Chinese practice of soaking the feet in warm water with ginger before bed. Heat stress activates heat shock proteins, which support mitochondrial protein folding and clearance of damaged proteins inside the mitochondria. Finnish sauna data, which is the most studied, shows 3 to 4 sessions per week associated with reduced cardiovascular and all-cause mortality. The Asian household equivalent is far gentler. A hot foot soak for 10 minutes, water above the ankle, ginger sliced into it. Same direction, lower intensity, still real. Item 20. The Bama County practice the literature has not fully named. The 8,700 subjects in the Bama longevity studies share several patterns I have already mentioned, but there is one I have saved for last. The afternoon nap. 20 to 40 minutes between lunch and the resumption of work. Asian tradition word, xiuxi. Western literature catching up. A 2023 Lancet sub-study of the Mediterranean afternoon rest population showed similar cardiovascular protection. The nap reduces cortisol, gives mitochondria a brief recovery window, and consolidates morning learning into long-term memory. 20 minutes, not 3 hours. Lying down. Eyes closed, ideally before 3 p.m. That is the 20. Let me pull the bilateral synthesis together because the bridge is the point of this video, not the items individually. The Western literature now has a clear molecular picture of mitochondrial biogenesis, PGC1 alpha, AMPK, sirtuins, NAD+, mitophagy. The Asian ancestral practice has, for 60 or 80 or 200 years, depending on the village, induced exactly the same cellular cascades through gentle eating, post-meal walking, fermentation, warmth, daylight, rest, and mushroom and herb-rich broths. The molecules are the same. The interventions arrive at them by different roads. The cell does not know which road the input came from. It only knows whether the input arrived. If I had to give you the cheap version of the entire protocol, here it is. Eat to 80%. Walk 15 minutes after dinner. Have your last meal before 6 p.m. Get morning sun. Drink 3 cups of green tea. Eat fermented food daily. Do 20 minutes of slow movement most days. Take a brief nap when the afternoon allows. Cost: under $2 a day if you cook the rest of your food yourself. Most of the supplements I mentioned are useful additions for some people. The foundation is what changes the trajectory. Subscribers see the next video first. That is the only mechanism. If this earned its time, the subscribe button is in its usual spot. What the village knew. What the lab now confirms. Until the next paper then.